This week, we will be working on database design. So you're going to be learning how to kind of set up a brand new database. And you are going to be using this information next week when you start working on your term project. So we're going to be looking at two different chapters this week. We're going to be looking at chapter 8, which is on data types. And then we're going to be looking at chapter 10, which is how to design a database. And so when you are designing your database and laying out your tables, that is when you're going to utilize the data type information that is in chapter 8. So we'll start with a lecture demo on chapter 8. And basically, we are just going through all of the different data types. And there are a lot of them. At the bottom, there are some interactive exercises that you can try out. At the bottom, if you want to do practice converting things from one data type to another, you can, but this is optional. It is not an assignment. Then we get into chapter 10. And this actually does deal with database design, and we do have an assignment that goes with it. So when we are designing a database and determining what tables we should have and what columns should be included, we go through a process called normalization. And you are going to learn what normalization is. And there are, I believe, 6 different levels of normalization. And these levels are referred to as normal forms. Most businesses go through the 3rd normal form. They don't go through, normal form 4, 5, or 6, just because the more normalization you do, the smaller and smaller and smaller your tables get. So this basically walks you through what normalization is using examples, because in a company, especially if they don't use a database, one of the ways that you determine how to organize the data is you actually look at the paperwork they fill out, and that would be their forms. So I have lots of examples of forms. And then we get through here reasons that we do normalize, what the process is. And one of the big reasons that you want to normalize data is to avoid problems in your database. And these types of problems would be, how do I change data without having a ripple effect? How do I delete things without, unwanted results? Okay, such as deleting a sales rep and all of a sudden all of their customers have disappeared. That would be an undesired result. Okay, so this talks about different anomalies, and anomalies are problems. And these are typically resolved using normalization. Okay, so we go through, and I've got lots of examples in here. But normalization is one of those things, you can read about it, you can kind of understand it, but until you actually go through the process and you do it, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. It becomes a lot more concrete when you do it yourself. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So after you lay out those tables and you've determined what columns you're going to have in your tables and you've normalized them, then you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to connect these tables to share information? And that gets into relationships. Most of the relationships between your tables are going to be either one-to-many or one-to-one. And most of the time you have a one-to-many. And in this particular diagram, you can see there's a 1 and an infinity sign. That is one-to-many. And you can see all of these tables are related in one-to-many relationships, and that is very normal. An example of a one-to-one might be employees and compensation or employees and benefits. Okay, that type of thing. A company's not going to allow an employee to have multiple benefits. So that would be a one-to-one. Many-to-many relationships are a problem. That means usually that your table is not normalized and you don't want many-to-many. So what you end up having to do is kind of break this out and create a third table, which is typically called a bridge table. And normally what you do is you take the primary key of each of those tables and you create the bridge table. And the bridge table has a one-to-many relationship with each of the table. Okay, so bridge tables are pretty common. If you do find that you have a many-to-many relationship, it does indicate that you need an extra table. Okay, so you've got customers and orders, orders and products. You can see that orders and products are many-to-many because one order can have many products and a product can be on more than one order. Okay, so then that was handled by adding a third table. This third table would then include the order ID or primary key from the order table and the primary key from the product table. Lastly, we get into indexing. So when you create a table and it has a primary key, that primary key becomes the clustered index. You can also have non-clustered index columns, and you can have like up to 249 of them. Now, do you want all of those? Absolutely not, because it will make your database run very slow. The purpose of indexing a column is to speed up queries. So quite often, columns that are foreign keys will be indexed. And also columns that you use a lot in a where clause should be indexed, because foreign keys and the columns that you use in a where clause are used a lot, and it makes sense to index them because that will speed up your retrieval of items in your database. Okay, so talks a little bit about indexing. And then you get into the textbook assignment. So the textbook assignment walks you through creating ER diagrams. And we're just using Microsoft Word for this because you guys should have a copy of Office because it is free for all NMC students. And Office comes with a shape command that's in the insert ribbon. And so you can use the shapes that come with Office to create an ER diagram. And it's very easy, quick to use. It doesn't require that you guys download or install any additional software than what you already have. So there's a video that walks you through how to create an ER diagram. This is from an example in the book. You'll be identifying the keys and the foreign keys. And the way we do that is we do PK for primary key and F key for foreign key. And then you will be joining the tables by creating lines to the primary key, foreign key relationships. Okay, and then eventually you'll be adding the one and the many designator, which is the infinity operator. Now, one of my clever students said, can't you just use the number 8 and rotate it to its side? I'm like, of course, yeah, that would work great. So if you guys would rather use the number 8 and rotate it, that's fine, okay? As long as it looks like an infinity symbol, I do not care. So this is the end result, what yours should look like when you are done. Then we get into normalizing tables using Excel. And so you're going to download this spreadsheet. And you are going to normalize the data because right now this is all the data is in one big old table. And you need to create multiple tables. So here's what we have. And you're going to be creating multiple tables and adding them as separate sheets in Excel. And the video shows you how to do that. So the first video is how to take that big spreadsheet and split it into multiple ones. Each sheet will represent a separate table. Then the second video shows you how to do an ER diagram from the spreadsheet that you modified. Okay, and it'll be similar to the ER diagram video in task number 1. Okay, so this kind of walks you through the process. We started with 4 different tables because the information basically could be grouped into those 4 areas. And then we go through normalization through 3NF, and then we get our revised tables. I do have an example here showing you this is the original and then what the final result should look like. For your ER diagram, I actually am giving you a starter document here so you can download it and then kind of follow the steps. And if you feel like you need additional practice normalizing, here is another example that you can actually work through. So here's the spreadsheet, okay? And then you can kind of work through the process and check your answer. So what do you need to turn in? You need to turn in the diagram from part 1, the Excel file with the different sheets representing your tables from part 2, and the normalization exercise, which is the ER diagram from part 2. That's what you need to turn in. Okay, and that's pretty much all we're working on this week. Now, this process of creating the tables in Excel and displaying data, kind of like fake data, test data, is something that you are going to be doing next week as the first milestone in your term project. You will also be doing an ER diagram next week. So everything that you are doing right now in chapter 10, you will be doing in a final project assignment next week. The difference is you are going to pick the topic of your database, and it can literally be on anything. Okay, so you may want to be thinking of that for next week. Now, do I expect you to do a perfect job setting up your tables when we get into next week when you are designing your own. No, I fully anticipate you guys are going to need help. I just request that you turn something in, give me something to work with, and then I will help you fix it. Okay. So for this week, focus on learning the process. Next week, you will get to practice it on your own, and I will be helping you. Okay. Other things this week that you should review is functional dependency. So you know what that term is, because that is a term that is going to be on your certification exam. And basically, if you're talking about functional dependency, it is data that is dependent on other data. So in a table, everything should be dependent on the primary key. So in this example, employee name, salary, and city are functionally dependent on employee number because employee number is the primary key. That's basically all it's saying. If you feel a little fuzzy on normalization and primary keys, I did give you another handout that you can look at. Okay, so maybe this will help you clarify some things in your mind. And then there are the additional resources at the bottom that we always have. If you run into problems or if you have questions, please let me know, and have a great week.